Hello and welcome to the Rally Point with Dominic Fielder, author of the King's German series, and myself, Rob McLaren, the author of the Joubert series. Hello, Dominic Fielder.
Hello, Rob. How are you?
I'm very well, very well. And each month at the Rally Point, we catch up with friends who enjoy the Napoleonic period. Now, everyone, we're recording the first 30 minutes of the gathering, but once the recording is over, we remain online and the conversation continues. This month, we would like to welcome Hans-Karl Weiss to the Rally Point. Hans-Karl is an amateur historian and a most experienced reenactor. Hans-Karl is based in Bavaria. Hans-Karl, welcome to Rally Point.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Over to you, Dominic.
Hans-Karl, good afternoon to you. There's lots I'd like to talk to you about, and I think we're going to do this over a series of broadcasts anyway. I'm particularly interested in your the insight you're going to give us on Prussian tactics later on, especially around the sort of 1806 period. But I thought today we might start with that most humble of battlefield weapons, the musket. Can you give us some insight as a reenactor of the problems that you have using a musket on the battlefield, or just getting a musket in a ready state to a battle?
Okay, this is a very complex question, and I suggest that you listen to my talks, and then you will be able to answer this question for yourself. Because it's always easy to give answers or give statements, but I like to give information so you can derive your own statements. A musket is a very complicated tool, and it's used in a very complicated and very dangerous environment on the battlefield. And all this has very big influence on the performance of the musket. If you would use it on the shooting range, you wouldn't have a lot of problems with a musket. But in battlefield, even in reenactment, there you will encounter the problems with the musket, and it's a difference if you shoot only 10 times or if you shoot 30 or 60 cartridges. The more cartridges you shoot, the more problems will arise.
And what about this idea when you're coming to the battlefield as a reenactor? How many cartridges are you taking with you? There's always that sort of famous idea. I think most war gamers would have about British soldiers having 60 cartridges on them, and they're going to be able to fire them and almost sort of worrying about running out of ammunition. In your experience, how does that number work? Is it even achievable at all?
Could be when you have a long battle reenactment, but usually you have about 30 to 35, and usually you are happy when you expand these, because it's not very often that you fire 10 or 15 cartridges in one go. It depends on the battlefield.
Can I share with everybody some images of Hans-Karl in his reenacting space? Can everybody see that as where?
Yeah, this
is I can. Yeah.
This is from Bicentennial of Reenactment Marengo in 2000, and there I reenacted a normal chasseur in the light infantry, and you see already on my shoes how muddy it was there, and we got really dirty, and you see it also in the background.
Yes.
This was also bicentennial in Arcole, where crossing the Alpone, we really went down through the river and up on the other one. I was just wearing my revolutionary uniform then. Well, not uniform, revolutionary dress.
Good.
And this was at Leoben, where this armistice was signed. We also had an event, and we did a battle reenactment as well. And the day before, it was about 30 degrees plus, and overnight it snowed. So it was really good because nobody had, or a lot of people didn't even have greatcoats with them. But usually your uniform gives a very good protection against cold and even against wetness. So this is again an image from the Marengo reenactment of 2000. And I think I will present this image always in front of each of my talks because it gives you an impression how densely soldiers were spaced then and had to operate a flintlock musket. And it's very rare because a lot of reenactments usually use only 2 ranks, but fortunately we use 3 ranks. And it's a big difference if you use 3 ranks or 2 ranks, because 2 ranks it's really easy, but 3 ranks gives you a good insight with what difficulties a soldier had to fight and cope. And you see also a bit smoke. So whenever we talk, always have this image stored in your background memory to understand what is the environment. And also you see a flintlock musket in case nobody has seen a flintlock musket so far. And for the start, I want to give some observations of 2 officers of this time. And this is from a Austrian infantryman, infantry officer, who wrote 3 handbooks about knowledge which an officer should know. And this was written in 1807. And he says, steady hitting with the small arm belongs to the main basics of tactics, that the task of the firearm isn't just to make a bang, but also to hit. Still, however, the bang and the smoke are often the only effects. All experienced infantrymen know that a battalion expends often all its ammunition. That is, at a battalion of 600 firearms, that each man has 60 cartridges, 36,000 balls. And yet, when one takes a close look, the enemy hasn't suffered more than 30 to 40 killed and wounded. When, however, the effect of the firearm is so low and whimsical, then the important question is popping up. What are the reasons that so many balls are shot without any success, and that the account of consumed cartridges in a battle stand in no relation to the killed and the wounded? However, when Scharnhorst made his musket trials from 1800 to 1812 and published the results in 1812, and he didn't only test muskets, but rifles and even cannons, he came to quite a staggering hitting efficiency, if you look at it. So we have to know first how it was performed. 10 soldiers in a line were shooting at a target which was 6 Prussian feet high, about 1.88 meter, and 100 feet wide, 31.38 meter. And I took the example with a French musket, not a Prussian one, because I tested all different kinds of muskets. And here you see the hits at 200 paces, which is quite close actually for me, but not too close. It's 49.5% hits. And if you go down at 400 paces, which is almost 300 meters, you still have 27.5% hits. Okay, they were shooting on a wall and not on humans. So if we say we just parted by 2, so we have 50% of all that, you would still have hits at 400 paces about 14 or 15%. So after 5 or 6 volleys, the enemy unit would be destroyed. But when you look beforehand, he says 40 to 60 at 36,000 shots. And this is the framework we work in between. Why have we these results and why have the other results? So first, I just want to talk about what is a flintlock musket, how was it, what parts belong to a flintlock musket, and what kind of tools a soldier did need. So we start with the flintlock musket, and here you see a flintlock. Here you see we call it in German it's Schloss, in English the lock, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we start with the barrel. When you look at the barrel is very thin, because we speak about the smoothbore flintlock musket, which is actually wrong because it was forged around an iron rod. And at the end, the material is much thinner than the start, where actually the explosion of the powder happens. So you have a sort of a conical shaped barrel and the material is thicker where the lock is fitted to the barrel. And we have a small hole, the touch hole, which is connecting the battery with the interior of the barrel. And then at the end here, you see the tank screw, which is very important because it's closing the barrel at the end or the start. And there are two different types, which I will discuss also. And they have the wooden stock, which is also very important in shape. When we will discuss also this again when we discuss the different kinds of musket types, because you had quite a modern shape like this, but you had straight shapes as well, where it was almost impossible to aim. There you see again the tank screw, and there were two different types. One was the cylindrical one. You see it here.
Yes, yeah.
Cylindrical touch hole, and you have the conical touch hole. And this created a self-priming pan where you didn't have to put powder directly from the cartridge under the pan, but it would go automatically from the interior of the musket outside the pan. And of course, this would be quicker in loading, but it had his haphazards as well. Then we always have to remind ourselves, all these things were handmade, despite millions of muskets were produced in the Napoleonic Wars. And there's a huge variation. And when you look at originals, you will find shorter, longer muskets, heavier, lighter ones. The most important part was the barrel. If it was too small, then you couldn't use your cartridges. But there's always, when we talk about dimensions and all that, bear in mind there's a huge range of variety due to the still man-produced production line. Here you see they're making barrels in this one.
And Scott, can I just ask, is that sort of forge arrangement, is that something that an army would take with it, or is that really
no,
that's coming from deep in the...
This is not a field forge. This is just in effect or manufacturing factory.
Right. So it's something that an army has to deal with, all getting all of these things.
They wouldn't produce muskets in the field. They would produce horseshoes or make tools for the artillery when they had to repair artillery. Right. So usually the artillery had forges, mobile forges with them. Okay, then we go to the next part. This is from the Manuel d'Infanterie 1808, which is a very important manual. And actually, when you do French reenactment, you have to read this because it contains much more than the drill regulations. And you see again the barrel, you see the wooden stock, and you see underneath this one, the ramrod, which is very important because it was muzzle loading. And there were two kinds of ramrods, the conical ones you had to twist, and the cylindrical one, which you didn't have to twist. And below, you see the lock. And then, of course, bayonet was important also. And usually you had to fix the bayonet to your musket and keep it. It's strange, even in modern day reproduction ones, when you buy them, you usually have to adjust a bit with filing your bayonet, and you have to keep it. So when you were transporting muskets, the musket has to be transported with the bayonet. Otherwise, you have problems, as the French found out when they transferred the Imperial Guard from Spain to Austria in 1809. And they didn't have the bayonets with the muskets they belonged to, and then they had to fiddle around, but they fixed, of course, the problem. Then when we speak about the flintlock, we must know some terms. So very important is the cock, which is on top holding then the flint. And then you see the hammer, also called frisson, I think, if I'm correct on this. And then the pan. And this position would be how you would carry a musket. You would never have a musket open, closed, pan open or not. When you do your drill exercise, when you shoulder your musket, when you start at morning, this would be the position, and it would be all the time like this. When you look at Hollywood, usually hammer is open, and also, unfortunately, a lot of very nicely made miniatures, they also show this. And to show you the three parts Oh, okay. Just the Austrian lock, a bit different. This was a British one. And you see like here, the pan is oblique. So it's even better catching the sparks from the flint. Next, you see the flash guard. This is a flash guard. It's used very often in reenactment. Some units use it to reduce the sparks from the effect from the flint, and also the fire coming out of the touch hole, so it burns the face of your neighbor. But in the Napoleonic time, only muskets with conical touch holes had such flash guards. The Austrian model of 1784, which was used in the Napoleonic period at the beginning as well, and all Prussian muskets. The rest did not have the flash guards, and the units I reenacted with, we also rejected flash guards because it gives a completely different idea when you fire a musket with flash guard and without flash guard. Then we see the three positions of the lock. The top, as I said, that's the usual position. It's called half cock. This you would use all the time. When you want to fire, of course, you have to give full cock. You move the cock back, and then you pull the cock. It will strike against the frisson, explode the powder on the pan, and then the fire will go inside the barrel, and then you will ignite the powder of the cartridge, and then the shot is fired. This is usually giving a slight delay. It's not instantly. It's a very short moment till everything is firing. The lowest position, like this would be when you fired your musket, and only this is for all kind of types of muskets. You would fire like this, and then you have to begin your loading sequences. But this is again topic next topic. Just showing how it works. Full cock, French call it chien, and then you pull the trigger, sparks, and hopefully the spark go onto the pan, and hopefully the sparks will ignite the powder on the pan. So not that easy and quite complex. And you see the importance is the flint. If you don't have a good flint, it won't spark. If the flint is too big, the sparks go outside the pan. If it's too small, you have the same problem. And so the flint is playing a very important part of the functionality of a musket. And here we see French flints. They were nabbed in a different style to the British ones, for example. And the French flints were regarded as the best flints because they created the best sparks. And also I can confirm this from reenactment experience, makes a big difference if you spark with a French flint and or a British one, which is made out of a different kind of flint stone. And of course, as I said, it's important that you have the right size. You just see an overview. Also, you see the different nabbing styles. Like this would be more likely French style. This is British style, where you have two edges. So you maybe twist the flint, so you have a better edge, and you don't have to exchange the whole flint in battle. And of course, this flint has to be fixed in a sort of a cover, so you can secure it on the cock. If you put it just stone, it will fall out because it's not fixed. So at this time they used lead. So this is the next topic then. You see on top a cartridge pouch, and below you see some parts which were carried along the cartridge pouch or with a soldier. Sorry. This is parts of the French cartridge pouch. In the interior, you have a wooden block. In each of the compartments, right and left, there would be a package of 15 cartridges. And you see 6 empty slots in the middle. There would be a flask of oil and a place for 5 more cartridges in the open, so you have them at the ready. When you have be on picket duty, you would take one of this out of the already open cartridges, and you won't use the packets. Then here, very important, the wooden flint, because when you do drill and you would use a normal flint, it is destroying the metal of the frisson, of the inside. And this would be very bad. And the more often you do it, the worse your frisson would get, and then it doesn't spark as well as it if you keep it in a more pristine conditions. And you have to have it, because when you do drill and you don't go through all motions, soldier won't be able to cope with it. So you have to really pull the trigger, and with a wooden flint inside, you see the effect, how the wooden flint is touching the frisson and opening it. And below you see the normal flint, and it's already in a lead cover. The French, they did even make a special construction. You see it here. And there's a hole, so you can place it nicely into the fitting lips of the cock. And you would have in your cartridge pouch, you would have the flints already fitted in lead, because you would have no time in battle to fit a flint in lead. So you would throw away your used flint and get in the cartridge pouch and take out a new one. And just to see a cartridge pouch, you see it's half opened, and inside you see the wooden block. And then you see it opened, and this part, it's the parts where you would carry the wooden flints and parts of the musket tools, because you need some tools to operate your musket even as a soldier. And when you don't have it, you cannot operate your musket, like for cleaning or exchanging flints in battle. The British had, additional to this cartridge pouch, another one. They called it magazine. I haven't seen it only in the British Army. This is that one, which carried an extra 24 cartridges. Usually in a cartridge box where 35 to 60 cartridges, it would depend on time and nation. And usually also 3 flints. 1 flint already in the cock, and the 2 spare flints in the box. Well, then, how is a paper cartridge made? This is usually made by the artillery. They would make those, and it's made out of paper. And you see it's thicker here and thinner there. So you would start rolling with a wooden, how do you call it?
A rolling pin.
Yeah, we call it a rolling wooden part, and you say it's half round there, and there it's a hollow, and you would place the ball into this, and then you start rolling on the wider side, the cartridge. So when you have to tear it open, it's easier because you have less material here, so you can rip the cartridge up easier. And very important also, and as I said, it's different. It's made of paper. It is rolled, and then the top is folded, so it's not opening up. And then very often it was carried in small parcels, like 10 cartridges, 12, French Army 15. And yes, I always wonder sometimes where they did carry the extra packages. Like in the French Army, you have 35 cartridges in your cartridge box, and you have maybe another 15 in one packet, or maybe 2 packets. But where do you carry them? They are made out of paper. They're in a paper envelope. You have to carry it in your haversack. Difficult to carry it around. And just to give some images, how that would look like. We did reconstruct in our unit the material, how to make cartridges. You would roll it up. You have a cylinder, a paper cylinder. And then here you see the amount of powder you would need. So you would scoop it up with the powder. Then you have a funnel, which you place on top of the open part of the cartridge. And then you pour the powder in. And here you see a reconstructed worm. They say in English, I think the French say tire
Yes,
balle.
yeah.
Because you can see the tire balle has an extra screw, so you would get into the ball, which is made out of lead, which is soft. And like when we were on guard duty or on picket duty, you had to draw out your cartridge because you cannot fire it out, because then the alarm would be raised. And also, like after the battle, when a lot of misfires happened and there's still cartridges inside of your barrel, you have to take them out. And then finally, last image is the just to show you some different paper cartridges that were made out of from different material. They used very often whatever was at hand, and it was folded. Sometimes they had a string, so it had a great variation. But usually cartridges were made in French army, at least from the artillery, and they would have a production line, and you would get issued your cartridges before the campaign. And also cartridges were taken along on ammunition wagons with a regiment. And as I said, usually 40 to 60 cartridges was the average an infantryman was carrying into battle.
Hans-Karl, thank you very much for that, Neil. That's exceptionally detailed. How long do you think a flint would last for? That's my first thing. I'm just looking at the wear on them, and also the wooden flint. I've never seen that at all. That never crossed my mind about the use of a wooden flint for drill.
Yeah, actually, very nice when you read memoirs, because in one memoir I just read about it, when the soldier said, because they were going into action, now we were issued with real flints, and we had take out our wooden flints.
Oh,
so
well,
they used it. So it's I don't know whoever served with you in the army. You only can do what you train, and the more realistic you train, the easier it is. But if you use a real flint, it will destroy the metal of your frisson, and that's very important. If the sparkling mechanism is one of the most important function of the flintlock muskets, if that doesn't work, you could have the best musket in the world, but it won't shoot. And I give you an idea. Usually an infantryman did carry 3 flints for about 60 shots.
Yeah.
So the military said a flint should last at least for 20 cartridges. And I read all the statistics because I wrote an article about flints. Actually, I just reread it. And then like they say a good flint should last about 30 cartridges, 30 shots, a good flint.
So in all likelihood,
you go down to 20 because they play it safe.
Yeah.
And then again, what don't we know? If I say a good flint lasts 30 shots, do you change a flint at the first misfire? Most likely not. You would look what is the cause of the misfire. Sometimes you would tap with your musket tool on the edge of the flint to resharpen the edge.
Right.
So maybe after 10 shots, you already have a misfire, and then changing the flint is a big problem if you're in rank and file. Think about the first image. Now think you're in the middle rank. You have to reach back. You have to fiddle out your musket tool. You have to get out your flint, and then you have to adjust. Because if the flint is not hitting the pan and the frisson at the right angle, the sparks won't hit the pan. So you have to adjust. And then you are shot at, and maybe then the order is given, stop firing and move. So it gives you a big idea, while it's nonsense to say they fire 60 shots in 5 minutes or in 10 minutes, because you have to change the flint. And the longer you fire, the more or less the probability of misfires.
Just going back to that first image, I mean, I'm used to thinking about troops in two deep lines, but seeing people in seeing soldiers in three deep lines, I said it makes you wonder how soldiers in the middle of that would be able to do any of those things you're talking about. But also the first thing about that first image, very powerful, is just the amount of smoke around it. How realistic is that amount of smoke, and how long does it last for on a battlefield once you've fired?
Well, I told you all beforehand that it depends on weather conditions, on wind.
Yeah.
And how many people are firing. So it could last quite a while and create a very dense fog around you, and you hardly see anything. But if it's windy and it's dry and hot, it's get blown away very quickly. So I have made different experience at different battles. Like I was anyway small, second rank, for me smoke didn't matter because I didn't see anything anyway.
Oh.
But also from the opponent, when you're shooting at troops, usually at reenactment you have the problems. Usually you're quite too close, but when you are a bit more distance, then also you see, yeah, it's getting hazy, it's getting foggy, and immediately, of course, after you fire, the smoke is very dense. But as I said, it's smoke. You know, if wind comes on, it might get blown away. And also it would be different if you fire volley, where 600 muskets fire at once, or when you do file firing, where only each file, two muskets of, let's say 2 muskets fire. And then, of course, you won't create such amount of smoke all of a sudden than when you do a big bang of 600 shots. So again, complex topic, because the flintlock musket originally was designed for a mass target.
Yeah,
no, it was not designed to be a sharpshooting musket, a rifle or firearm to hit a single target at a 300 meters distance. So he fired at a mass target. And if you think a battalion of 600 men in 2 ranks would be about 300 in the front, so you would have 160 meter width and about 180 meter height, and they were elbow to elbow touching. So a wall is, I think it's giving a good image what your target would be.
Yes, yeah. I was just curious as to the amount of damage a battalion's firepower is causing, and that Scharnhorst one certainly seems to back up the fact that actually it's a lot to do with the morale effects of fire, as opposed to as much with the morale as opposed to the casualties at the other end, and how effective skirmishers were at being able to be free of the line, and while not, as you said, it's not firing at small targets, but just actually softening up infantry battalions, that sort of massed wall. Also struck by when you give us the detail of the musket, how much is replaceable on a musket in reasonable terms? How much could you expect to replace on a musket in a field before you just threw it away and said, that's it, it's worn?
My reenactment muskets had never worn out. Despite I fired much more cartridges than I think a real soldier had the opportunity to fire. I think they're quite sturdy weapons actually. And you had to look, for example, on the frizzen, which is very important. If that's worn out, you had to replace maybe the frizzen first. But they had models in the Napoleonic Wars issued from 1770 to 67, and they still worked. So So we would fire maybe 2,000-3,000 times, 4,000 times till they are worn out, and they exist actually. I don't know the statistics. They did tests how long a musket worked actually, till they had to stop. But I would have to look it up. They exist tests they did, like the artillery did tests at what after how many cartridges the barrel burst or such things. But usually, I think for a normal soldier, no. On the battlefield, you couldn't exchange anything anyway, and usually when you were cleaning a musket, you hardly would completely dismantle it in all parts.
So that's different than really from soldiers in even in sort of World War II, I suppose, being able to dismantle weapons to a high degree and clean them.
Yeah, you have to do this as well. You can clean it. You can clean it.
Yeah,
but you would not.
but you wouldn't dismantle it
in all different parts. You would take the lock away from the wooden stock. You would
right.
take the barrel off. Then you would wash out the barrel itself. Then
Yeah.
you clean and oil the lock. You have to be very careful not to get any oil on the frizzen, because if it's oily, it won't spark any longer. Also, when you operate it in battle or in reenactment, if you touch it with your greasy thumb, you had it, big problem, won't work any longer, because it will clean it really in a good fashion. But they can field strip it, and then they would work nicely. They would work nicely, and you have to do it actually. Like when you have 2 reenactment battles on Saturday, one on Saturday and the next one on Sunday, clean your musket. Otherwise, it won't work well. A lot of misfires, and you hate misfires, I tell you.
What oils would they have used to clean their weapons? Where was oil generated from? Plants or animals, or how would you have got it? Yep.
They would use the oil which is at hand.
And where would we be seeing that?
Like some
linseed oil,
olive oil. There's no special. There's olive oil, which we use for cooking now. They would use whatever it's at hand. You know what can you say, soldier? You're in the middle of a field. I need oil. There's no special weapon oil. Nothing. So you would use whatever they have, whatever you find.
Okay.
You see the small amount of the oil bottle, the small amount.
Yes.
It's quickly gone. But they recommend actually olive oil. They recommend it to use.
Okay.
I used it as well. It worked well. But you don't have to buy an extra machine, you know. The cheapest olive oil would do.
Weather, rain and firing. Or rain and snow. What effects are those going to have on a reenactor, a soldier in the field?
Rain, it depends how hard it is raining. Light rain, hardly any. Hard rain, yes. And the problem is when you stop firing, like you fire 10 rounds, and then maybe you're not loading immediately after your last firing. Maybe you're just for purposes, tactical purposes, you fire, and then you have to move. And then of course, you have a shouldered musket and nothing inside. So then if rain or water drops come into the barrel and make the barrel inside, but then you have big problems. But like when you still load, and you still loaded, you have the powder, you have on top of the powder the paper cartridges, the cartridge, and still on top you have the lead ball still inside the paper. So it's quite nicely sealed actually. And there, I think you have a good chance to fire with this musket even when it's raining again. But if the barrel is empty, big problems. And also sometimes, funnily enough, you know, you want to put powder on the pan, and right at drop comes into your pan and onto the powder, and then it's gone. You would have to reprime. You know, you load from the cartridge. You put second part. I will show. You put the powder into the pan, and then you close the pan with the frizzen. But if it's still open and it's raining or wind, sometimes you hardly get the powder on the pan because the wind, and you have to be very close to your face and everything. So it's thinking also in firing in 2 ranks or 3 ranks. Next man touching you with the elbow, also loading. So it makes it difficult. Obviously, dry weather much better than rain in humidity. But it works to a certain extent.
Yeah. But how much time would it take you to change a flint, especially if you're in that second rank? And would you be allowed to drop out of the line to change a flint, or are you just working in the the very
usually
small room you've got?
usually you were not allowed to go out of your position, because you would disrupt the whole formation. So you would stay there, and then you have to cope somehow. And the front man, your side man, your rear man, they would continue firing and shooting. They wouldn't give a damn what problems you have. Maybe they would say, okay, maybe I help you or not. And then you stand there. When you have to go down, you have to get to the cartridge box. You have to take your musket tool out. You had to unscrew the screw which is holding the lips for the flint. Then you throw the flint away. That's the easiest part. So now you have a musket tool in the hand and a musket. Then you go back with your right hand again, and in your cartridge pouch, take out the flint already with lead. Then you place it into the two lips. They are loose. Okay. Then you have to hold the whole thing, otherwise the flint falls out. That's the worst thing you can happen if it falls out on the ground. Then you have to take. So you have in one hand your musket, and somehow with the fingers also the lips of the cock which hold the flint. Then you have to take the musket tool and to tighten it, but don't tighten it fully, because you have to check in what height is the new flint hitting the frizzen. If it's too high, the sparks won't fall at the flint. If it's too low, the sparks won't flow on the flint. So if you're a recruit and you have never done it, you're hopeless. I mean, we did it 10,000 times in reenactment, because we had an extreme amount of misfires. So I knew where the point is, where I could, what kind of distance I had to have. Then when everything is right, and you had to be really flat onto the frizzen. It doesn't have to be obliquely, it has to be completely flat. Then you would tighten the screw fully. Then you go back. The musket tool, if you don't have it, if you lose it, you can't change the flint. Then your flint is ready. You realize how difficult and how complex this is, only changing flints. For that reason, you would first try to find out what is the misfire. Maybe it's not the flint. Maybe it's the touch hole. You would use the trigger to clean the touch hole. Maybe you would use a musket tool, tap the edge of the flint, so the flint could work and spark better. But this costs all time. And of course, action is going on around you all the time.
I was just thinking of how, of the things that you're describing. Some ideals I'll shamelessly steal for writing, but also how this or how
Please
all this
do.
plays.
Please
oh no,
do.
I will, believe me,
Yes.
I will. And just how all this plays out when we play it on the tabletop. How wargamers are quite often sort of adamant that the firepower is, it's the maximum. This is the best unit I've got. And also, I think another thing which I think we should definitely look at this next time, and look at infantry fire, infantry tactics, the joys of oblique firing. Those people who look at that sort of helicopter division and say, actually, my battalion's not going to fire at the thing right ahead of it, the people who are shooting at it, but that target which looks far juicier, 44 degrees just off center, which I know I can hit. And with what you're describing there, that maneuver sounds like absolute sort of hell on earth to try and perform. Because even just firing forwards, I'm imagining sort of crouching down, trying to sort my flint out, wondering what the hell's going on. How did I end up in this mess, being the shortest person in the second rank? And then suddenly somebody says, "Oh, let's sort of oblique fire to the left," or whatever the command would be. It seems nonsensical. I hope next time you can shed a bit of light on that.
Hans-Karl, can I confirm that we'll have you back in August to talk about different muskets in different armies? Is that the intent? Any
Yes.
glimpse of the sorts of things you'll share with us next month?
Yes. Now we know how the parts of the musket and a bit how it works.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would show you just an overview about what kind of muskets they used, what was the caliber, what was the powder charge, how long were the muskets, like the touch hole, conical touch hole versus cylindrical touch hole, conical ramrod versus cylindrical ramrod. And maybe also the different kind of firings, like for Dominic, you know, oblique fire or volley fire in 3 ranks, first rank kneeling, yes or no. So we get another step up about to show the complexity of a firefight in the Napoleonic period.
I'm about to end our recording, but please stay online as we continue to chat. So to
Yes.
wrap up this month's Rally Point, thank you very much, Hans-Karl, for joining us.
Thank you, Hans-Karl. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Now, for those of you who've joined us this evening, thank you for your time with us. And next time, why not join us here at the Rally Point next month when we're going to have Hans-Karl Weiss describe more about the musketry and build on our understanding of infantry tactics. So simply contact Dominic and I for your Zoom invite, and our details are at the end of the video, and share Rally Point with your friends so we can hear from them as well. Any previous Rally Point chats are up on our YouTube channel. So it's good morning from me and it's good night from him.
Good night.